What you doing, Diggletdreamers? You got Mathers back for another draft overview video. This is for the Vitality Draft League Season 2, aka the VDL. You may remember my VDL Season 1 was a little while back. Didn't do so hot, but I think I might do better this time around. We'll see. But here, I'm not here to talk about the future. I'm just here to talk about what I drafted, which was, well, you can get a little preview right here. But this draft started right around the same time that the GLA was wrapping up. And if you're not familiar with the GLA, I'll put a note to that at the top of the screen. But basically, it was just the VDL was represented among a bunch of other leagues. So basically, it was 8 people from the VDL were representing the VDL within the GLA. And then all the leagues were duking it out, basically best of 7 each round. And so it was pretty fun. But it was just wrapping up as this draft started, and I was not prepared for this draft. But I came up with a few ideas on the spot that I just really wanted to do. And I'm pretty excited about it. I had a lot of fun. Drafted a lot of Pokemon that I really want to use. And I think it's going to be great. So why don't we start off with my round 1 pick, which was Hydreigon. I got a recommendation for this thing from Jose from the Seattle Marinas. I almost said Seattle Seadras. It's been a while. But he used this in his championship run for the VDL Season 1. And he was like, you know, this thing is pretty awesome. You should use it. And I was like, sounds cool. And then it came to my draft pick, and I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't really want any of these super high tier picks like Aegislash. I mean, I was considering Aegislash as like the only other thing, but like Aegislash, like Melmetal, like Greninja was up there. There's a bunch up there. I think I mentioned like one of them that was already franchised at the time anyway. But I didn't really care for any of the Pokemon that were super high tier. And this was the only one that I was like, okay, I could use this. This looks like it could be fun. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll take something in the higher tier. And so this is actually the highest tier Pokemon that I drafted, Hydreigon, at 16 points. I think the highest points were 19. I don't think we ranked anything at 20. So I didn't draft that high, but I kind of like it because it let me draft a lot. I got so you could draft 9 to 12 Pokemon. That was the maximum you could have. And I was able to draft all 12, and none of them were particularly low. Like some of them were a little low, but I didn't have to go with any like 1 point or 2 point Pokemon, which is pretty cool. Anyway, Hydreigon I think is really cool. Immediate ground immunity with Levitate, which is nice. Immediate dragon type and dark type, which is pretty cool. And it has a lot of cool abilities that it got with this new generation, being Nasty Plot and Dragon. Did it get Dragon Dance this generation? I forget. It might have already had that. But anyway, really strong Pokemon, especially with Nasty Plot. Can run a mean Scarf and Specs set. And definitely has some good bulk behind it as well. 92, 90, 90 is, I mean, for a pretty offensive Pokemon, that's pretty good. It also does get Roost as an option. It gets Defog too, I believe. Yeah. A lot of great coverage moves in like Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Flash Cannon to hit those fairies. Focus Blast is not bad. Earth Power is there. It even gets Hydro Pump now, which is pretty wild. Signal Beam is an option, and it does get a lot of cool physical coverage moves as well. If I ever want to run like a Specs, but then he has like some Pokemon that's strong on the special side but weak on the physical side, I can like run like Superpower in the last slot or something. It also gets Taunt, Tailwind, U-Turn, which are great. What's the word I'm thinking of? Great utility for the rest of the team. So yeah, I think it was a pretty good pick. Definitely not a Pokemon that I use too often, but I think it fits my playstyle pretty well, and I think I'm gonna do some crazy things with it. I'm excited. I also made it my Z-Move user, one of my 2 Z-Move users, so being able to bust out a lot of really strong coverage moves or super strong stab moves and Z moves is pretty cool too. yeah, looking forward to using this thing and see what I can do with it. So then for round 2, I picked up Rillaboom, which has Grassy Surge now, and I think this thing is super underrated. Grassy Surge is such a strong ability, and this thing, I mean, look at that, it already has 125 base attack, which is very strong, and with the Grassy Surge boost, I mean Grassy Terrain boost, it also, imagine switching into a Wood Hammer from this thing. It's going to be crazy. I think it's Tapu Bulu obviously was there, but I didn't really want to use Tapu Bulu. I've used that thing plenty of times back in Generation 7. I was like, let me try something new. Rillaboom's got its new ability, and to be fair, the ability did just come out, but we were going to be doing that anyway, and I don't know, I think it's really cool. A few things it gets that like Tapu Bulu doesn't. It gets U-turn, it gets knockoff, it has higher base speed, probably higher base HP, and 100 HP. That's not bad. But I think this thing can be really cool. It gets drum beating, obviously. It doesn't get Horn Leech, but it gets Drain Punch. I think this thing can be really cool. The base 100 HP plus 90 defense and 70 special defense, not too bad at all, but the 100 HP really can carry those defenses to actually do something. I think this thing can be really cool. It gets Leech Seed, always great. Lots of great coverage moves, honestly. It gets Darkest Lariat, Earthquake. It does get Focus Blast, Hammer Arm, High Horsepower, Knockoff, of course. Yeah, and Taunt too. I got a lot of Taunt users on my team. Taunt Pokemon are some of my favorite things because it's something that no one really ever expects or prepares for that often. So it's great to catch things off guard, especially the really annoying Pokemon that are defensive and have a lot of non-attacking moves. And hopefully that chainsaw isn't too loud outside. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about Rillaboom. Round 3, I wanted something that kind of complemented the Hydreigon pick, and unfortunately Mega Mawile got picked, which was the offensive duo in the championship team for Season 1 that Jose was using. So I went with Scizor instead. Slightly lower cost, but definitely very strong. 130 base attack, 100 defense is also really nice. Plus that strong technician boosted priority bullet punch is always something nice to have. Yeah, it gets Defog, Roost, Swords Dance, lots of great ways to abuse this thing. I think it can run a really impressive Choice Banded set. I've even seen Choice Scarf, which is not too bad with that base 65 speed. Against the right team, it could be really cool. Leftovers is not bad. Akaberry to take the fire moves or something. Even like a Focus Sash to live on one from a fire move and like knock something out. Could be really cool. Life Orb also an option with this thing. So yeah, I think this thing's pretty cool. It's got great defensive utility along with extremely strong offensive power, which is something that I appreciate in a Pokemon. And this thing is coming back in the Isle of Armor in like a week, or less than a week now that I'm recording this. So it'll be cool to use it a little bit right before it actually is reintroduced to the metagame. It does get a few new moves with the DLC, but I don't think there's anything really notable in there. I think most of the time it's just going to be running its usual stuff. But yeah, Scizor super strong. Pairs well with Hydreigon being that steel type. And I think it's going to be pretty sweet. So round 4, I went with Salazzle, Pokemon that I'm very comfortable with, something that was very prevalent in Sun and Moon RU, or Ultra Sun and Moon RU, I should say. So that was my tier. Like to this day, I think that's still my best tier. So I'm very comfortable using it. I know its strengths and weaknesses, and obviously Earthquake is his weakness, Ground type is his weakness, being a poison and fire type. But the grassy terrain with Rillaboom does weaken that to some extent, which could be very helpful. But the main thing I did want to pick this thing up is another taunt user, but it is a fire type, poison type, which is something that I really wanted. But it also has very good speed tier at 117, which does outspeed a lot of things. So it's going to be pretty cool. It does have hidden power in this league, so being able to run things like hidden power grass, hidden power ice is going to be pretty nice for it. But also, you know, corrosion and toxic is a great thing. If it ever looks like I'm going to be in trouble versus some steel type or poison type like Toxapex or like Mega Aggron comes to mind, I'll probably just fire move the Aggron. But being able to hit certain things with a toxic that aren't normally hit with it is pretty cool. And you know, there's things like taunt, sub, disable, which isn't actually the only thing on this team that can do that. Hopefully it doesn't ever have to come to that, but you know, maybe it will. Salas is also, I mean, the poison fire typing is, you know, it's got some glaring weaknesses, but it also has some really good resistances, making this thing very easy to switch in onto many fairy types, because it double resists fairy, double resist grass, so it can come in on those things, and it immediately threatens those things as well. Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty cool Pokemon. So next, I wanted to get a fairy type as well as something with a little more bulk as compared to what I have so far. So I went with Hatterene. I needed to pick up at least another Gen 8 Pokemon as well, because that was kind of the meme of Season 1, was that I was exactly 50% of all the Gen 8 Pokemon drafted were on my Season 1 team. So I was looking at all the fairy types that were still available in Round 5, and the only ones that kind of piqued my interest was Florges, because I'm very comfortable using that thing because it was in RU again last generation, and then Gramble, which sounded like a lot of fun, but I decided going with Hatterene. It was a little bit stronger, and I think it was pretty cheap in terms of what it was. I think it was only like 12 points, which is only like a point or two above Salazzle, which is pretty crazy to me, because Hatterene is, while it definitely has its niches, I think it is very strong. Like 136 special attack, that's not bad. It gets a lot of great coverage moves like Mystical Fire. What other moves does it get? It gets Aromatherapy, which is nice. I'm just looking at the moves right now. Unfortunately, it doesn't get Moonblast, which is, you know, a crime against humanity. But Dazzling Gleam is a good substitute. It gets Nuzzle, which, you know, is a thing. It gets Swords Dance, which I'm actually kind of curious to try out at some point, because it gets kind of some interesting coverage moves. It gets Play Rough, obviously, and Power Whip. I don't know, it could be really interesting. Baton Pass, Calm Mind is there, Trick Room is an option, Healing Wish, lots of great things. It does get Light Screen, does it get Reflect? It doesn't look like it gets Reflect, but that's okay. Stored Power is an option. Just straight up Thunder Wave if I don't feel like going for a Nuzzle. And, you know, Magic Bounce, probably one of the better abilities out there. Makes it so, you know, I can't be like toxic and worn down. Can't be burnt, except for like a Scald. But yeah, helps me beat a lot of more defensive Pokemon that might want to toxic me. Lets me switch in on hazard users and try to bounce those back, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, I think this thing's a pretty cool thing. I'm excited to use it. I got it pretty cheap, and I think it's a steal, so I'm very excited to use it. Speaking of steals, something that was only 10 points for my round 6 pick was Blaziken. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's not Speed Boost, so don't get too crazy about it yet. But I think Blaziken doesn't even need Speed Boost to be that good. It gets Swords Dance, just makes it an immediate threat. It does get Bulk Up as well, but look at these coverage moves. I mean, obviously it gets Flare Blitz, it gets Close Combat now with the DLC, which is what we're using, the rules we're using for this league. But if not, I also get High Jump Kick, it's a little stronger, and hopefully that, that Chainsaw. Wow. Anyway, it gets Brave Bird, it gets Earthquake, Focus Punch, Knockoff, Poison Jab, Rock Slide, Stone Edge even, and Thunder Punch. It also gets, what was I gonna say? It gets U-Turn now with the DLC, which makes, I think, Choice Band and Choice Scarf sets like way better, giving it that momentum to kind of switch things up. But I think Swords Dance is just very, very good. It gets Curse too, jeez. Defog as well, another defogger for the team. Hone Claws can make high jump kick a lot more viable. It also gets Will-O-Wisp, Toxic. Everybody gets Toxic. But no, I think this thing is going to be a very, very good addition to the team. High base attack, solid base other stats, and firefighting, great thing to have. And I had to draft 2 fire types on my team just like last season, because that was the other meme, is that I had Cinderace and Centiskorch, both fire types, and everyone's like, why you got 2 fire types? And then I beat people with it, so who's talking now? Anyway, so for my 7th pick in round 7, I decided to get my Stealth Rocker Swampert. This thing was super cheap. It was only like 9 points, but I think it's pretty cool. This thing is a great Stealth Rocker. Obviously, being a ground type, having that electric immunity. Water ground, one of the best typings. Obviously weak to grass, but you can play for that. You can plan around that. I have a lot of grass resistances on my team, which is part of the plan. Wait, have I revealed that yet? Yeah, look, my almost everything except Hatterene that I've drafted so far resists grass, and Hatterene's going to be taking hits. So I think this is a sleeper pick. It was only 9 points, very low on the points, and very strong. 110 base attack. People forget about this. It's a very defensive Pokemon, but it has some really strong offensive stats as well. Not to mention, Scald, Liquidation it gets this generation, and Earthquake as offensive options. It also gets Darkest Lariat now, and Ice Beam, Ice Punch are classic water type coverage moves. And the crazy thing that I think is really cool that it gets this generation is Bulk Up. Well, not this generation, but that it gets with the new DLC. Who knows if it'll be out in the Isle of Armor or not. But it does get Bulk Up now, which I think makes this thing into a very, very cool potential sweeper. Basically, the worst part about it is that it only has base 60 speed. I wish it had Taunt, then I could just run it like Taunt Corviknight with Bulk Up. But it also doesn't have the best recovery either. But anyway, I think, imagine this thing like bulking up with Liquidation, Earthquake, like behind a sub or something. I think that's just crazy. Unfortunately, I didn't plan this the best in the world, but it is my only Stealth Rocker. So it is going to probably have to do a lot of that most of the time. But I think Stealth Rock Bulk Up isn't that bad even. So, yeah, pretty cool Pokemon. Great addition to the team, giving me my ground type and my Stealth Rock user. And, leftovers as an item. Choice Band, Choice Specs, I think are useful on this thing. And I could even run like the Grass Berry just to, make it so that nothing will knock this out in one hit. Yeah, I think Swampert, very cool Pokemon. Very excited to use it again. It's been a little while. And my next pick, I basically decided this was the first Pokemon that I decided that I wanted. And it's very low on the points, very low tiered, which is why I was able to wait as long as I did. I probably could have waited longer. Luxray. Oh my god, am I excited for this thing. I think people are truly sleeping on this thing. Okay, obviously it gets Guts and Intimidate. Those are its best abilities. I think they're very, very good abilities, obviously, with the Guts, the Fire, Burn, what am I saying? Burn getting the nerf within the last generation or so. Only doing 6% damage. And if I can combine that with my Grassy Terrain user, Rillaboom, then that obviously kind of mitigates that damage a lot, where I think I'd actually end up recovering more than I'd be losing. Is that right? I think Grassy Terrain heals 12%. I need to test it out. But the crazy thing that this gets with the new DLC, which has been confirmed in the trailer that this thing is coming back in the Isle of Armor, so get ready to see it in OU. It gets Agility, which I think is actually so huge for this Pokemon. Base 70 speed was always its worst stat, and never really anything that it could do with it. I mean, it's still like a bulky offensive Pokemon, but with agility and 70 speed, it actually becomes into a very, very potent sweeper. Because 70 base speed, even with an adamant nature, not a speed boosting nature, it's going to be outspeeding things like a Specs, like a not Scarf or not Dragon Danced Dragapult, which is very cool. Because this thing has very strong base attack stat, 120 base attack. With an adamant nature, it's going to be boosted even more, and with a guts boost as well. And then hitting things like Wild Charge, Facade, Crunch, Superpower, and then it gets, in the DLC, it also gets Psychic Fangs and Play Rough, which I think is really cool. It also gets Quick Attack for priority, which is really cool. And this thing is going to be hitting so hard, and it has a lot of great coverage options, especially in this draft format where I can kind of prepare whatever set might be the best versus my opponent. Like I'm probably going to bring Facade on most sets, because that thing just hits so hard with Facade. Wild Charge, obviously, for stab, and then like Ice Fang, Fire Fang are also options that I didn't mention. But if I want to hit like a ghost type, I can bring Crunch. If I want to hit like a bulky steel type, then I can bring Superpower. So, oh man, I think this thing is going to be so good with agility, and I'm very excited for it to be the #1 thing on my team and in the league in general. So yeah, I'm very excited about Luxray. Very excited to just use this on the OU ladder, even if I don't get a chance to use it here. But I'm gonna make the chance happen. It's gonna happen. So this thing was only 4 points as well, and the funny thing is it wasn't even listed on the draft tiers. Like, it just had been forgotten about, and I was like, literally, like, my first idea was like, I want to draft Luxray, so I like tried to find where it was on the tiers, see how many points it would cost me, and it was just not there. So I had to let people know. I didn't let people know exactly the Luxray was gone, so I found out there was a bunch of things missing from the doc. Pokemon that you would forget about that only cost like a few points, or like very low PU or not even PU. So Luxray was like mixed in with all those things that I said were missing, and so it got added for 4 points. So I think this thing was an absolute steal at 4 points, and I'm very excited to use this thing. Yeah, very excited. Anyway, so what was that? That was 8th. Yeah, so next pick was 9th, and another Pokemon that I was very excited to get that I also thought was very cheap, Golisopod. Pokemon that I'm also very comfortable using thanks to my experience with Sun and Moon RU. I think this thing is really good. It's gotten even better with the addition of heavy duty boots. Heavy boots, they just slow you down. First impression, obviously the first thing that comes to mind with this Pokemon. I remember when this first came out, I ran a set that I nicknamed Priority King, because it gets first impression, obviously, Aqua Jet, Sucker Punch, and it might even get something else that I'm forgetting. But yeah, this thing's really cool, really bulky, like 75, 140 defense and 90 special defense. It's pretty solid. And with really good typing, Bug typing is surprisingly good in resistances. Resists ground and fighting, which are two really common attacking types, which I think is really cool. Like back in RU, this thing was my like Zygarde 10% counter. When that thing was like, it was suspect tested, maybe even like twice that thing was suspect tested, but it stayed in the RU. And this thing literally just countered it. Like, first impression would knock it out, and it could switch into ground type moves with ease, with this huge base defense and being the bug typing. So very, very cool. This thing gets close combat now in Gen 8, which is really cool. Bulk up, obviously, an option. Swords Dance is an option. It gets Drill Run. It gets Ice Beam. It gets Knockoff, Leech Life, obviously with the stab, Liquidation, Poison Jab, Rock Slide even. It even gets like Sludge Bomb and Sludge Wave. I didn't even know that. But another taunt user as well. I think this thing is very good versus slower, bulky teams. because it may be slow, but if you can run speed in it and it doesn't really mind, like its base defense is good enough to take the hits you want it to hit, and then you can just run enough speed on it to outspeed certain things, and then it can throw off a taunt, it can throw off a super strong liquidation or leech life, because most people are going to be expecting a first impression from this thing, so being able to use that to your advantage and hit stronger with stronger non-priority moves is really cool. And the best part about this thing is it also gives me a spikes user, which is something that I think is very important in general. I think spikes is one of the best hazards, definitely better than okay, well, all the hazards are good at what they do, but I think spikes is very underrated, just because of the ability to stack them, and I think like one spike is pretty good value. Like stealth rock is good against certain things, but it does have that, it's kind of a grace and a detractor for rocks in that it has type effectiveness. So certain things it's only going to be hitting for 6%, but unless you're flying or levitating, spikes are going to be doing, one spike is going to be doing 12% guaranteed to everything, which I think is really cool. So I think spikes are underrated. I'm very excited to run this thing with like a choice band and spikes, so like it forces switches but then gets the spike up on the switch. I think it's gonna be really cool. I'm very excited to use it. Heavy duty boots, obviously one of the best items on it right now, but I think choice band is really solid. Assault vest, maybe, yeah, assault vest could be pretty solid. Citrus berry to like try to counteract the emergency exit could be really cool. But again, I guess I should speak a little about emergency exit. It definitely is situational, but in the right hands, it can actually be very good momentum. Like if I get a first impression off, and then they hit me, and I hit my emergency exit, then I get a free switch. So I get a big first impression damage off, and then I get a free switch in, which I think is really cool. Yeah, I think emergency exit is definitely underrated ability. And I have so many U-turn users on my team already that are going to be getting momentum for me to bring in my guts boosted choice banded Kolink. That's my nickname for Luxray. I should explain. So the Japanese name for Shinx, the prey evolution of Luxray, is Kolink, and that was the name that, because I was so excited for Diamond and Pearl that I got the names of the Pokemon in Japanese before they came out in English. And so I've always thought of that line as Kolink, and that's what I named my Shinx when I got it originally in Diamond and Pearl. So that's how I think of Luxray, is calling it Kolink. Yeah. So yeah, gonna be getting a lot of momentum switches into Luxray, which is gonna be awesome. So next was my round 10 pick, which was Frostlass. Very excited for this thing. It's what I wanted mostly was a spin blocker, so I can keep my hazards up against rapid spinners, obviously. Ghost type is the main way to do that, but I also just wanted a ghost type in general because ghost types are very good. And Frostlass is just, it works really well with my playstyle. My team synergy is a very offensive team, and Frostlass is a very good dedicated lead. Running like a Sash Spikes, can run like a Thunder Wave Hex, or it also has Taunt. Does it get Encore? No, but it gets Endure. Yeah, I mean, having a nice stab ice user is really cool. I can probably use this thing to knock out things like Garchomp and Zygarde, because I am going to be outspeeding them with my base 110 speed, which is another reason I drafted this thing. So far my second half of my draft has been a little bit on the slow side, but Frostlass hitting that 110 speed going to be very nice. It actually has the same attack stat and special attack stat, but special attack moves are going to be doing a lot better, especially being a ghost type. There's no really any, unless you want to run Shadow Claw. It does get Ice Shard priority if I ever feel the need for that. It can run a screen setter, light screen and reflect, like Clay or something like that. It gets Sucker Punch, it gets Switcheroo, Taunt, Trick, which is the same thing as Switcheroo. Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, combined with Hex, it gets Thunderbolt coverage, which I didn't even really realize. Yeah, I think this thing's going to be a really great addition to the team. I could see myself running a mean like Specs or even Scarf with like Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Psychic, or even like Signal Beam for like Dark types. Yeah, this thing's pretty cool. And it gets Aurora Veil. I mean, I could run Hail Aurora Veil sometime. I mean, I can run the same thing with Light Screen Reflect and the same amount of turns. Anyway, Frostlass, very cool Pokemon. I feel like I probably don't need to tell too much about this thing. Cursed Body, you know. Heavy Duty Boots, also a great option for an item on this thing now. You know, taking away that Stealth Rock damage to the Ice type. Speaking of Heavy Duty Boots users, I had a lot of points left towards the end of the draft, so I decided to get something that I really wanted to use, and that is Crobat. I wanted something with a good speed tier. Obviously, Crobat, one of the faster Pokemon out there at 130 base speed, but the main thing I wanted was a flying type. So far, I think I was relying on Grassy Terrain and Levitate Hydreigon to avoid ground type moves, but I wanted to have something a little bit more reliable, and I think Crobat is the thing for that. Really strong flying type. Poison Flying is a very good typing. It takes on obviously those grass types that I mentioned not too long ago. It takes on fighting types, takes on fairy types. Really cool. Heavy Duty Boots I think is going to be a great item for this thing. I'm pretty sure it's confirmed that this won't come out until the Crown Tundra, which is in like November supposedly. So unfortunately won't be seeing this on the regular ladder anytime soon, but that's part of the reason why I was very excited to bring this thing as well. I think this could run a very mean like no item set even with acrobatics. Obviously Brave Bird being a little bit stronger than that, but obviously acrobatics doesn't have to take the recoil, which I think is really cool. Obviously, you know, it gets U-turn and a lot of other utilities like Taunt, Tailwind, Toxic, obviously being 100% accurate, you know, with being a poison type, which is always good. It gets Roost as well, Defog too, and it gets this is a very interesting set that I got recommended by Jose. White Herb Curse with acrobatics. So Curse obviously boosting attack and defense and dropping speed, but then the White Herb will, you know, eliminate that speed drop, and then also activate the acrobatics boost in power, which I think sounds super fire, and I'm super excited to use it. I'm almost sad that I even mentioned it right now so that no one can, I was hoping no one would ever see it coming, but people that might watch this and see it now. Quick attack priority is there. I think a choice banded Crobat is actually very solid. Like U-turn, Brave Bird, and like another 2 moves. Like quick attack might even be a good option there. I don't know, maybe a poison move. Does this thing even get like cross poison? I don't think so. It is actually Pursuit Trapper too, so watch out. Yeah. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, it gets Hurricane with the DLC, which we are using, even though this doesn't come out until the Crown Tundra. I'm still using it, and it gets Hurricane. And if you didn't know, it gets Nasty Plot. So it gets a lot of cool coverage moves actually with the special coverage. I mean, Air Slash obviously, or Hurricane, or its stab moves. It gets Sludge Bomb, Dark Pulse, Heat Wave, Giga Drain, and Shadow Ball. Yeah, I think this thing could, I think Nasty Plot could be really cool on this thing. It obviously doesn't have the best special attack, but you know, with a Nasty Plot boost, it could definitely put in some work. Of course, the main thing being that I don't want to rely on Hurricane's accuracy. So maybe if I'm up against someone with Rain, or does this thing get Rain Dance? I don't think it does, but you know, maybe something on the team. I can use some synergy with that, and you know, maybe I'm in a good enough spot with this thing that I can rely on Hurricane, and maybe if I miss, it's not the worst thing in the world, and if I hit, obviously big damage. It also, I should mention, it gets some very good abilities. Inner Focus obviously got the boost with Intimidate no longer dropping the attack. Infiltrator is also very good, I think, versus like substitute setup Pokemon, and obviously going through things like Reflect and Light Screen if anybody ever brings that against me. Yeah, very cool Pokemon. So very excited to add it to the team. It was very late. Like I only have one pick left, and this thing was like 12 points. So very cool to pick this up towards the end there, when everyone else was just kind of getting the scraps, and some people were even done with their draft by this point. But I was not like, nah, I'm picking up 12-point Crobat right now. So my last pick, I had 5 points left in my draft, and I was looking around like what's something good at 5 points, and I saw Sceptile. So I was very excited. Obviously this thing gets Unburden, which is, great ability. I think it's honestly a little like crazy that this thing has base 120 speed and gets Unburden. It's like, why would you ever need to be that fast? But with the grassy terrain, I am able to run Grassy Seed Sceptile, get that defense boost, is it, I think, and then Unburden. I mean, look at this thing, 120 base speed plus 2 with Unburden. It's absolutely ridiculous. I was looking at like speed tiers, and this thing with no speed investment at all, it has 276 as a stat, and that's gonna be hitting like over 500 speed with no investment with Unburden activated, which is absolutely nuts, because that means I could run like max HP, max attack, adamant, and still be outspeeding like everything. So I'm very excited about that. Obviously Sceptile gets Swords Dance, it gets Dragon Dance now with the new DLC, and it gets Solar Blade, which, I mean, continuing with this Unburden stream of thought, if I can run Power Herb Solar Blade, like, my god, like Swords Dance, Power Herb Solar Blade, and then get the Unburden boost with the Power Herb gone. Like, I think this thing is super underrated, and I think it's going to be pretty sweet. It can also run, it has, decent, I mean, obviously its special attack is a little better than its attack. So, think about like a grassy terrain boosted Leaf Storm, running like Choice Specs, Choice Band. I don't know if I could run Choice Band. If this thing got U-turn, then I absolutely would. But Acrobatics also having that synergy with Unburden. It gets Crunch, it gets Brick Break, but it actually gets a Drain Punch, which is better than Brick Break. Earthquake, Dragon Claw, Focus Punch. Oh my god, imagine a substitute Focus Punch Sceptile. That just sounds so dirty. Hone Claws is another setup option. Oh, Hone Claws with Iron Tail could be pretty dope. Leaf Blade, obviously that main stab move. Leech Seed is an option as well. Pursuit Trapper as well. Power Up Punch, Outrage, Night Slash. This thing gets so many moves. Rock Slide as well. Throat Chop, even Thunder Punch, X Scissor. Yeah, this thing's gonna be fire. Like, let's just think about this. So, Swords Dance, Leaf Blade, Acrobatics, Drain Punch, with Adamant, max HP. I don't know. This thing's. I'm just excited to see what I could do with this thing. Like, so overall, my team very offensive. Obviously, not that many defensive things in general, but I think I have a lot of good resistances, and yeah. So let's see. So obviously, Swampert, my big grass weakness. But let's see. Let's count up how many grass resistances I have on this team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait. So I have 1, 2, 3 that double resist grass, and then I have 4, 5, 6, 7 that just resist it normally, and then I have Scizor with my fire type weakness. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fire resistances. I thought there would be at least one more, but yeah, I think people overestimate the power of quad weaknesses. I think there's a reason that Pokemon like Scizor are still at the top of the ladder when even though they have that 4x fire weakness. And obviously Hydreigon is there too with the fairy weakness, but you know, that thing's top of the ladder for a reason too. And the cool thing about this team, I think, is that I have Swampert and Scizor, which basically makes people have to decide between Hidden Power Fire and Hidden Power Grass when they're up against me, which I think is pretty cool. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this team, and I expect to see Luxray at the top of the kills chart. All right. Yeah, so hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have the first battle of VDL Season 2. I'm very excited. If you guys are hyped for this team, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe so you can see the team in action when that starts happening. And let me scroll up to the top just so you guys aren't staring at, you know, Sceptile this whole time. Yeah. What's your favorite team member? Mine's Luxray. Obviously. Talked about that thing probably longer than I talked about any other team member. But leave a comment down below what's your favorite team member. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Keep dreaming. Goodbye.